What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Property Management Roundtable. Today's discussions, first thing we're going to talk about is the eviction moratorium. President Trump just signed this into law, and we're going to talk about how we think that's going to affect our industry. The second thing we talk about is NARPM's annual conference is moving to all virtual, and we talk about virtual conferences and whether we feel like we're getting anything out of it and our initial thoughts over the first 6 months of virtualizing every conference. Then we get to mergers and acquisitions, a lot of M&A talk about what we're seeing from transactions, so interesting conversation there. Mikey has moved to Gainesville and opened a new office there over the last few months, and we talk about kind of some things that are going right and some things that are going wrong with that. And then we also have an awesome discussion about hustle, about the idea of hustling, moving on, crushing things, trying to get a business to the next level. And then we talk about job titles, like what is your job title? How did you come up with it? What we feel like job titles mean in our industry. And then the last thing is just books we're reading. So we hope you enjoy the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Property Management Roundtable. I have the pack back. What's up, everybody?
Hey, yo.
There.
We have a bunch of topics we want to cover today. First thing is we're going to talk the eviction moratorium. So President Trump signed this into law, and NARPM sent out an email, and we were circulating emails and text message threads. So I'd be curious, since Tim's our NARPM liaison, Tim, what are your thoughts on this eviction moratorium?
Oh, man.
I had a hard time saying it there for a second.
Yeah, that would actually take the entire podcast to give you my thoughts. But yeah, shout out to NARPM. They were way, their government affairs folks were way out in front of this. I was getting text messages and emails the night before it was coming out. So it felt good to have that information ahead of time, and it seemed like it was really succinct. Have you guys read it? It's 37 pages.
No.
You should read it. It's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of people are asking the question, does the CDC have the authority to do this? And the paper goes into it pretty heavily there as to why or how they're justifying it. And essentially, we may get some injunctions in the court system, but I think it's going to hold up the way that they wrote this thing. It's basically saying if you evict people, they either go homeless or they combine households, creating gathering points, creating potentially people who might be moving from one state to another, carrying the COVID-19 virus from state to state. So the CDC is pretty solid, I feel like, on their ground there, at least from what I read. Now, do I like it? That's a different story. I think it's interesting what they did. They put restrictions on it. They give you a lot of information around who you can evict or when and why. And they very specifically said not for non-payment of rent. So previously, go ahead.
Let's talk about that, because a lot of people are believing that essentially carves out our ability to evict for other reasons, since they specifically said non-payment of rent.
No, it says just the opposite. It very clearly says that you are allowed to evict for reasons other than non-payment of rent.
What he said, isn't
That is what I said, but it's okay.
Okay, sorry.
I knew before this we said we were going to speak in opposites this whole time, and you probably thought that's what I was doing. So
yeah. But no, I think it's interesting. When the CARES Act came out, and it was based on the property, right? So they could only get after federally backed mortgages, federally subsidized tenants. This is actually, the CDC's done this, and it's around the individual. So they've wrapped it around all tenants. So it's interesting. I mean, technically we can still evict. We can charge late fees. But that's about it. If they're people that are qualified and they're truly hurt by COVID. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think we talked during when COVID first happened. I mean, we wanted to be empathetic around that. And so this kind of, unfortunately, it regulates it, but it kind of falls in line with a lot of the stuff that we talked about when COVID first happened.
And I will tell you, we haven't had trouble with people paying rent. It feels like
Yeah.
people are continuing to do what they're supposed to do. I don't know how this will affect it because this just got passed. Mikey, I'd be curious about what you're seeing in terms of residents, and are you getting any feedback that people are not going to pay rent?
I will say this, we did have a few people that were in payment arrangements or were in talks of giving cash for keys that have since stated, no thanks, I'm just going to ride it out. Now it's a very small percentage, but there have been a few that are kind of going to take advantage of this, extension through December 31st. So, I mean, I think overall though, collections are better than anyone had ever really thought they were going to be. And we've experienced the same thing you have, Matthew, kind of about the same. So instead of our sub 1% delinquency, we're sitting at like 3% across the board, all our properties combined. And it's hovered right around there. It didn't go up or down. And in August, it was kind of steady. July was a little lower, June was a little higher, May was a little lower. It's been weird, but it's all been within a 0.5 percentage point, nothing outrageous.
Vinny, what are y'all seeing being on the West Coast?
That was a combination of west and left there, wasn't it?
The left coast.
West coast.
The West Coast. That's right.
In like California, we do. I would say that the eviction moratorium that we're discussing hasn't changed anything on our end. I mean,
They've had eviction moratorium for 30 years in California. So.
we have some folks that are on payment plans, and everybody's been responsive to us. So that hasn't changed yet. In our other markets, Arizona, Texas, it's a different dynamic. I would say that Florida and Atlanta have probably have posed. They have the higher delinquencies out of all of our markets. But California, we have a lot of SFR in California that's pretty strong.
Are you guys sending something out to your tenants about it, or are you just letting it roll?
We just let it roll. And for us, I don't want to raise their awareness that they're not going to be evicted till after December 31st. And then heck, who knows how long it'll take after that.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's just where it is now. Yeah.
It's going to be a cluster of, cause basically for us, we weren't evicting. We didn't even evict people who weren't in federally backed situations. We did a few, but not a ton. So now we're 9 months into, we'll be 9 months into no evictions. It's just going to be a complete cluster if people don't do what they're saying. Now, fortunately, things are in a good place. But we didn't send out any letters saying, hey, if you don't want to pay rent, don't worry about it. You don't have to.
Well, yeah, I would hope nobody did that. That would be probably against your fiduciary responsibility to your clients. But I think we are going to send something out with late letters. Just we put something up on the resources page on our website of the places that they can go for. The state of Virginia did some funding for tenants, 50 million, I think, in Central Virginia. And so we're putting that on our website, and then we're sending something out with late letters in addition this month that says, remember to check out our resources page. We're not asking people not to pay rent. We're just reminding them of the resources available.
I was speaking in opposites. What about
Let's continue to do that.
What about you, Mikey? Illinois, I know has done some of the same things because I was talking to our friend Cliff McHugh the other day. Are y'all seeing any of, do y'all have a state-backed program that it's helping residents pay rent?
Yeah, it's more localized than that. It's per county, but each county has its own kind of follow-up to the CARES Act that they have received funding. So Orange County, for example, is offering $4,000 in rent. That stopped August 30th, so I'm not sure if it's only up through August 30th, but you can get up to 4 months of rent. So ending August 30th. There are caveats to it though. You can't charge late fees, you can't charge renewal increases, and then you can't start an eviction until December 31st, which, prior to the CDC's moratorium, was a big deal because you had a business decision to make. Like, okay, do I take the money now and wait until December to potentially evict them if they go back into default? But that's all changed now. So we applied for that funding for a few residents who qualified for that because of the fact that now everybody's under the eviction ban. It's interesting though. You guys, you talked about the moratorium, and I guess I don't quite fully understand it because the most recent thing I saw was that is still going to be impossible to evict on things outside of rent too. Did I read that wrong? I heard what you said loud and clear to me, but I didn't. Has anybody been able to evict anybody for something other than non-payment of rent since this has gone through? We actually snuck a few evictions in for non-payment of rent during the gap of August for people that hadn't paid since like January that were already kind of being filed through the system. I haven't heard of anybody since this moratorium. I know it's only been a week, but I haven't heard of anybody successfully evicting anybody during this period.
I do not know the answer to that. We haven't obviously done it.
I think it's probably going to come down to a couple of things, right? I mean, it's hard to get even into court at this point in time, right? Because of some of the COVID situations or restrictions or whatnot. And then I think, it's going to depend sometimes on what judge you're in front of and how they interpret it. But go back and read it. It's 37 pages, so it takes forever. But and you guys know I can't read, so or don't read. Not that I can't, I just don't. But it's very specific, and it says only for non-payment of rent. So I haven't heard anybody that's tried and failed, but I haven't heard of anybody that has gone through with that either yet.
Yeah. Did you guys send out the form that they're supposed to present, the declaration page that they're supposed to present?
No, that's kind of what I was asking earlier, is if you guys sent that out, because it's all attached into the same thing. We chose not to send it out. If somebody requests it, we are going to provide it.
Yeah.
And if we are going, like I said, we're going to reiterate what resources are out there right now for people to get help paying their rent, get groceries, those sorts of things.
So what you're saying is if they mention, hey, I don't have to pay rent because of this new law, then you send them the declaration page. And I did enjoy the fact that they talked about all the things that they could do if they lied, but everybody knows that's probably not going to matter. And they're not going to charge them $100,000 and perjure them and, throw them in a Russian jail.
I think on the other side of that, I wouldn't be super aggressive with this thing, but I think it's going to be hard because everything is put on the tenants and they have to make these declarations that they've been impacted, that they make less than $99,000. I mean, I think there's going to be probably some leeway on the side of the landlords, depending on what municipality you're in. Obviously not in California, but probably everywhere else.
Duke, we hadn't let you talk yet, which is shocking. I usually go to you first.
This is my favorite podcast so far.
Coming right out of the gate. One of the things I was going to ask you, did Tim approach you first of all with this, hey, y'all don't have to pay rent through the end of the year? And I want to know what that conversation looked like and how you turned him into at least sending it when they expressed their problem. He said he's the big-hearted one in the team here, and I just know that's what he came to you and said, hey, let's just tell everybody they don't have to pay rent through December 31st. Merry Christmas.
Because rent is optional in front of our office. I don't have much to add to this conversation because I don't worry about it much. We can't change what the national government or CDC is going to do, so we have to just adjust and roll with it. The only thing I've seen happening is, this hasn't changed much in what was going on before. Class A housing's paying rent, Class B is just down a tick, and Class C is hurting a little. We've had a couple sales transactions, like a 6-unit building, for example, where 2 of the 6 tenants were just not paying rent. So to make that buyer okay with it, we went to both tenants and said, hey, if you just move out, we'll just waive your balance of 4 months and you don't owe it. You won't get your credit dinged. Both of them chose to move out in 2 weeks. I see that as being a remedy for folks that, if you're a landlord and you're in a bad spot, your tenant now hasn't paid rent for 4, 5, 6 months. That's a tactic you may want to employ, but I don't have much to add to this topic. We just got to deal with it. It's part of the game. Those are the rules we have to play by.
So switching subjects here, the Wynn has been targeting me to come back to Vegas. And so I bought in and I clicked on the ad, and we could stay at the Wynn for our mastermind group. Sorry, Vince. We could stay at the Wynn for like $119 a night for a week.
Sure beats Chicago in October.
Yes, I'm sitting here thinking the same thing. I'm like, how bad does Cliff want us to come? But point being, we haven't been to Vegas in a while, and we're not going to Vegas anytime soon. And that's kind of a crappy way of taking us to Tim and the NARPM convention that is moving 100% virtual.
You got me on trial today here, man.
Yeah. Well, you're the one that knows everything. I mean, as our resident NARPM liaison.
I won't disagree with the sentence that I am the one who knows everything. I'm not sure about the NARPM liaison thing, but I'll try to do my best. I take it you want me to talk about the NARPM convention.
Correct.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was last time or 2 times ago, I said that we were going to have our board meeting and make a decision. And unfortunately this year we're going to have to do a entirely virtual conference. The good thing is, as an executive committee, we had kind of been planning on at least doing a partially virtual conference for a long time. So we had the wheels spinning on that to make sure it's a really great event, months ago. We got approved dollars to spend to make sure that we've got equipment and all that sort of stuff. A lot of the details are still being worked out. A lot of the changes to how we're going to continue to possibly utilize Damon John and hold classes. Damon John?
Inside joke, sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's not that inside. Everybody's seen the video, hopefully. But
hopefully.
A lot of those decisions are still kind of in flux. But there was just, when we were talking to the resort, the restaurants weren't open. We had to limit gatherings. So it's like there was no way we could throw a world-class event as we typically do it, as NARPM has done in the past. So we had to make the decision to do it virtual.
So, I mean, save the fact that the PAC was on the last of a virtual conference recently. Our last pod was on a conference. We did it in front of everybody. I'd be interested to know, Vinny, what are your thoughts on all the virtual conferences that we're going to?
So I went to IMN single family, and I would say that IMN probably is at the top of the pack when it comes to hosting conferences. Like, that's what they do, and they did a pretty great job, I think, actually, to do a virtual conference. I was impressed. Granted, it's not the same. Like, I don't know. I'm personally not a huge fan of like virtual happy hours. Like, they just don't work for me. But the sessions were nice, and there's breakout rooms. I set up a bunch of meetings. So I thought IMN did a good job. The one that we were on, last week, Second Nature did an awesome job. Andrew killed it. So I think I'm trying to be as positive, kind of to Duke's point, actually, just about like a general thought process around all this. It is what it is. So like, we could attend and make the most of it, or we could not attend. I lean towards just attending, and it's more efficient than having to travel there. So I was able to work and get a lot done, catch up with some people that I hadn't seen for a while. So I'm looking forward to the NARPM one, Tim. I'm sure you guys have put a lot of work into it, and it'll be good to get together there. Hopefully you've got us the pack in a session.
Not yet, but that's going to be the first thing. We just had this meeting at the end of August, and that's going to be the first thing now that I'm going to put on my to-do list, is make sure that we get at least 2 full uninterrupted hours.
Yeah. And Damon John in between us.
I think, yeah.
We kick it off, and then he can then he can go second, and then we'll go third, like where we belong. Duke, I'd be curious about your virtual conference thoughts.
Yeah, similar to Vinny's. I would say when COVID hit, I was all over these webinars trying to get a feel for what's going on in the world. And for that first 3 weeks, I bet I attended one a day, like just trying to get a grasp on everything. And then since then, I'm a little fatigued from virtual conferences. I like to try to sit down in front of my desk for 6 hours. It's hard for me to do. And so I've just been like popping in and out. I thought Second Natures was great, but I only went to part of it. I didn't go to all of it. So I think NARPM should do this because they need to engage with their folks and give their folks value. And I think people will find value. I'll probably attend NARPMs, but I've been kind of dodging all the others as of the last 2 months just because of fatigue.
Mikey, last thoughts on this?
This isn't boding well. I'm glad you guys are coming.
I'm really excited. Really excited.
I'm excited too. I'm excited to interview Damon John. And
That's what you're doing. You get to interview Damon John.
Oh, we are the Wolfpack.
Oh, that's what. Now
Yeah,
that's what we need to do. I mean, he needs to be our sixth dog in the pack.
Wolf.
Perfect.
All
I'm
right.
excited about that. I'm just throwing it out there. Vinny, did you catch me at IMN? I got a chance to talk on that panel. It was cool. I do like their.
That's when he got all his work done. Was the panel you were on?
Mikey, because there was a couple. I went to the single family one. Which one did you go to?
Single family one. I was on. I forget the exact
No,
topic.
I do remember seeing you now.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you were awesome,
Like,
Mikey.
crushed
Oh, it
it.
was awesome.
Yeah, you
I
killed
learned
it.
so
I was in a
much.
different breakout.
Right? The suit coat with the tie is probably what you were wearing.
I thought IMN's was really good. It's a good conference and second nature, but I agree with Duke. It's tougher to plug in and stay unplugged from work when the computer's right in front of you.
Yeah.
So
I think we're
it's a
actually-
challenge.
We're trying at NARPM. We're trying to navigate that, Mike. I mean, I think that's a good comment because I've found the same thing. I tried to attend a lot of second natures, and I found myself getting alerts like that all the time, and just like looking down and looking at what the alert is, right, instead of focusing in and gaining information. It takes a lot of focus, and as we know, this group maybe isn't always the most focused when there's squirrels running around.
Well, it's about good content. I mean, if somebody's putting out good content, then people are listening. And if they're not, then the first thing I'm going to do is go to my Slack or go to my email and start checking email. So it probably puts because when you're at a conference, you're kind of a lot of people are forced to just sit in there and listen to it, even if they're not getting anything out of it. But this puts a lot of pressure on the conferences to put out good content with professionals such as us.
You're really lobbying hard for this, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk to Damon. So speaking of conferences, I mean, one of the things that Vince was famous for doing when we were at the conferences, putting the screws to us and trying to put the hard clothes on us from an M&A standpoint. So that's what we're going to switch to, is talking about mergers and acquisitions, how COVID has affected the mergers and acquisitions market. So I'd be curious, and of course, I'm just kidding. Vince is probably the best at not being overly salesy. So I appreciate that. Vinny, how would you say COVID's affected the M&A world? Because that's kind of where you were, and I know your job roles changed a little bit, but I'd be interested.
Yeah, so we're just a quick update on mine, and I think I've mentioned this a few times. We're still actively looking, but really are going to pick things back up in January 2021. So part of that was already pre-planned pre-COVID, just to digest the companies that we've onboarded already. So we're kind of taking a step back on that, but we're still open to the right opportunities. I would say that going into COVID, we had a few companies that we were going to acquire, and one of them we actually transitioned from an acquisition to just a referral agreement. It was a small deal, so it was just a different structure given we couldn't nail down their trailing 12. There was a lot of unknowns. Wanted to make sure that the tenants were paying rent, so we just structured it as a straight referral deal. So they shut their doors and referred us as their property manager that they were transitioning business to, and we got about 75% of the business. And it was a smooth transition because the owners actually picked us. So that was good. The other deal that we were in contract to buy, they backed out because just of all the unknowns, and this was their retirement nest egg. And their business is healthier than ever. I actually just talked to them last week, And, I think you all could probably attest to this, that I think PM companies who have well-run operations are probably healthier now than they ever have been. If they got PPP, their delinquencies are relatively low. So companies are doing pretty well. So I haven't seen it's not like there's been an influx of distress. I have heard some people just tired, like they're just sick of everything, like not only their business, but just exhausted from this year and are starting to really consider a succession plan in the new year.
We're sitting right here, Vince.
So yeah, so
talking about the black circles under my eyes, I think.
Can you, so is now the time you could like put my number in mind, like flashing at the top of
mine, but don't call till January.
Vinny, you guys finished their raise right before COVID, right? You closed on the money before?
No, during.
Right during. So how was COVID played into just venture capital and private equity, just the industry as a whole? Did it affect it at all?
Yeah, from the venture community, it's tightened up a lot. I mean, we hit kind of two headwinds. We hit the whole WeWork debacle, which if you all remember, it feels like a century ago, but it was just last December. We were, anticipating to close last year, and then that hit, which made the venture community kind of rethink valuations and their investments. And then we picked back up and, COVID hit. So it definitely tightened up investment, but there's still investment dollars going in. And I think if anything, it speaks to the interest to our industry. The fact that our investors, we had strong investors, the terms were the same, and they're super excited about property management and real estate. And so I think the real estate, venture community is still pretty strong. I would say that if you're a new company coming out of the gate with no, you're just raising your seed round, it's a lot tougher right now.
That's just the theoretical there. That's the point in mind there. No, so I was listening to something this morning, had nothing with property management, but Bill Ackman was talking about in a volatile, crazy world, things that are steady seem to go up in value because of, you can kind of, I think I would put property management companies in that steady, predictable, reliable kind of residual bank. So with that in mind, have you seen property management company valuations change at all during this, stay the same, go up, go down?
Haven't seen any change in them. I would say that the property management companies that have a brokerage arm attached, like brokerage is on fire. Every brokerage that I've spoken to, they said they've never been busier. So as a result, their revenues are, through the roof. So if anything, their valuations went higher just based on pure revenue standpoint, but not a big swing in actual multiples. So your guys' 10x valuations are
Not any closer?
No.
Damn. Okay.
Hey, can we go back to something really quickly? You mentioned, Vinny, you had done a referral kind of acquisition this year. We did one of those at the beginning of the year, and I know we all talk about how difficult transitions are, right? When you buy a company and you're either transitioning in new employees or you've got the owner that's still on board and whatnot. Has anybody else done one of those, first of all? Mikey, have you guys done like a almost bought and then went into a referral?
No, not technically, no.
Yeah, not technically. And then Matthew, you were saying
We have not.
Not
we've not.
technically.
technically.
Technically, no.
I guess, I don't know. In my mind, it ended up, to Vince's point, like it was easier because the clients were all bought in ahead of time. We ended up paying a little less per door because it was a referral. I don't know. I wonder if I thought it was a pain in the butt at the time because the guy was fighting me and he said he didn't want to sell and he just wanted to refer him over. And obviously you have less control, but I guess, I don't know. If you thought it was easier, and I kind of thought it was easier after the fact, I just kind of was thinking maybe it is really freaking easier.
Well, I think Vince said the right thing. He said people were choosing them.
Right.
Like sometimes with acquisitions, you get into some trouble because people feel like they're being forced to go with this new company. And we've lost people day one just because they don't want to be told what to do. And the referral agreement is basically, hey, I'm choosing you over another menu of options.
And I'm only giving these people 30 days notice and you're going to be number one on their radar. And so, yeah, I mean, we struggle with that exact thing, Matthew, with the Sarasota acquisition with the HOAs. It's, assumable contracts and all that, but they're like, well, first of all, they don't know that. Second of all, they're like, well, maybe we don't really want to be assumed by this company. So we spent a lot of time building credibility. Fortunately, we haven't lost anybody. We've done a fairly good job, but it's a lot of legwork.
And I was going to ask y'all about that. You and Duke, I mean, y'all decided to purchase during this time. My question is, what did that decision look like? And then what are you doing to build credibility and build trust?
Duke, do you want to go into the decision, which was mostly just you got excited about it?
I'll go to the first part and let Tim handle the second part maybe. The decision to buy, we just didn't think the world had changed that much in regards with this company. The contracts for buying, like to Vinny's point, that hasn't really changed. Like it is what it is. A lot of bad things have to happen for that purchase not to be worth what we paid for it. I never try to time the market in that regards. Like you're not going to, hit the top or the bottom perfectly. If you're going to buy companies over the next 20 years, you'll buy some when the market's hot, some when it's not, and some in between, and it all kind of average out. So it's a long-term play, not a short-term play. The rest of it, Tim, I'll let you handle as far as the communication and the trust building.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of the communication kind of got, the initial communication that works in this time. I mean, everybody's getting bombarded with digital communication, so it didn't work quite as well as it had in the past. So spent some time down in Florida, went down myself personally a couple times, met face-to-face with HOA presidents, spent a lot of time over the last 4 weeks on Zoom calls, going to board meetings, meeting these people in person. There was a lot of feelings from this particular clientele that we were the big bad company coming from out of town, corporate. This was a mom and pop sort of operation, and they were afraid of us until they kind of met us and got to know us. So we spent a lot of time just actually going back to old school, building relationships sort of stuff.
They must have Google searched Duke Dodson.
They did. They do Google search Duke Dodson and found him on the MTV dating show in 1999 or whatever it was.
Yeah, like shots of him at La Villa down in Panama City.
Club La Villa.
La Villa.
Boom, just everywhere.
I have two things real quick on the referral thing, just as like a couple nuggets to take into consideration. One, if you're going to do that, like hopefully you have other relationships with other PMs in your market that you could also kind of partner up with, because as the owner coming to the agreement with you, they want to get as much of this business as possible. So if like, for example, we only got 75% of the owners, that's 25% of owners that just went elsewhere. So if you come to the table with multiple options, it's somewhat helpful, but it could get tricky. And then secondly, you really get a good idea of how much the people liked their property manager. Like, I think we assume that the companies that we acquire or whatnot, they love their property manager, but
well, they tell us that.
Yeah, they tell us
everybody loves us. Nobody does it like us.
And they're like,
friends.
I've been looking to fire this person for a long time, so why would I trust somebody that they're referring?
Yes. Yeah, you get to see the trust that's been built with them or the credibility that's been built with them. Yeah. I would like one more follow-up question. Differences between acquiring an HOA versus acquiring an SFR portfolio?
The
list is vast. Duke, I mean, up front.
Obviously, one of your clients are bigger, right? So we're basically, instead of buying 600 different clients and one leaves, who cares? You're buying 8 or 10 or 15, and each one is more valuable. That's one. Tim, you want to go into?
Operationally, you're not, and similar to Duke's point, you're not purchasing one contract that one person or a couple or a investor group of 5 controls. You're talking about your contract is controlled by 8 board members who are representing 700 people out that live in their neighborhood. So it's a lot more volatile in the, I would say, relationship aspect of it. It's a lot more, you have to keep a lot more people in the loop. You have to be a little bit more clear with communication. And then a really, really big one, which I didn't quite understand enough ahead of time, is we weren't privy to as much access to information ahead of time. So when we closed, whereas on a single family side of things, we've got names, potentially addresses, all these sorts of things ahead of time, not necessarily bank account information. In HOA world, we spent a lot of time on the back end building all this stuff into AppFolio in this case. And really we had to catch up to speed a lot more on the back end, and there was more, the due diligence was just a little bit different to try to make sure that it was a good asset to buy. But then on after closing, it was a little bit of a whirlwind versus, I don't know how you guys feel about the day after a single family closing. It seems like everything is normal.
Yeah. And Duke, I would be curious if your thoughts, y'all got into HOA kind of later in the game, later in your business. So I'd be curious about, are you still happy with that, with being an HOA? What are some things you would change about that decision? Do you wish you'd gotten into it earlier?
Yeah, I think it could be a distraction. Like if you're small and if someone's listening that has 300, 400 units doing just single family, my advice would be just focus on single family. Become good at that really one thing. We fell into HOA because of an acquisition. We bought it for a company for another reason, and it happened to have an HOA management division. So we studied it for a year to decide if we wanted to do it or not. The reason we decided to do it is that we felt we could grow it pretty fast because competition is weak in most markets. And I think that's across the board. It's a hard thing to do. People are more likely to be mad at you in HOA than, even than single family, which is really hard to make your clients happy. Right.
That's shocking.
But you just don't have a lot of, you've got 1 or 2 big companies out there, but you don't have a lot of sophistication on the small to mid-size HOAs, and no one's out there trying to do it well in most markets. So I think there's a huge opportunity. You do need to scale it pretty big for it to matter financially. Single family, I think, will still prove to be the breadwinner at most shops like us for a long time. It's just the most profitable if you do it right. But HOA with scale might get there. So I think we're happy we're doing it. We're learning, we're growing, and check in next year, and I'll give you the answer next year to see if we're still happy in it. But so far, so good.
Vinny, I saw you nodding a bunch. I'd be curious what your thoughts on HOA are.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So, I have a close friend who just bought an HOA company in San Francisco, previous minder, and it's a totally different business. So you can't when I heard you guys going into it, Duke and Tim, I was a little worried just because it is so different, but you guys are obviously sharp and can figure it out. We've talked about going into it, and it's just too different. It's a completely different business. And, I think there is a lot of opportunity there. I would actually say on the acquisition side though, I think the relationships with the associations are critical. There's been some, we could talk offline, Duke and Tim. I'd like to introduce you to some folks in Seattle who've really kind of done something unique up there. And I think they're running a pretty good shop. It's different than, every other HOA company that I've spoken to. So it's just about getting your processes right. But I think there's a huge opportunity at scale. You have to have 5,000, 6,000, doors for it to start being interesting. But yeah, I think it's interesting.
Please note, podcast listeners and viewers, Matthew's face when Vince called Duke and I sharp and smart.
Yeah. Again, it's all relative, right?
Vince is he's so nice, and the rest of us so aren't. So he's our respectful member. All right, Mikey, you appear to be in Gainesville again, and you guys just opened a new office in Gainesville. We talked a little bit about it, I think, last podcast. I'd be curious to know, you're moving kind of into your next city. So you're in Orlando. Now you're moving to Gainesville. You've got a big property that you're managing in Gainesville. And I'd be curious, number one, have you found any more properties in Gainesville to manage? And number two, what are some lessons that you're learning? Because you sure are up there a lot.
Yeah. So we had, just to clarify, we did have probably 250 units in Gainesville, or so 200 units in Gainesville before we took on this 461 unit portfolio. So we had a presence here, all boutique multifamily. I think it's 7 other properties that we manage here. Before we took on this acquisition, which is 4 medium-sized communities, all in the 150 to 100 unit range. So I have relearned what it means to hustle. Everybody goes through phases, and this is one of those phases for me where it's just nonstop sprint. So Matthew made me read a book last year, towards the end of the year, called Why We Sleep. And it scared me into sleeping and really working on trying to get, 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. And I've abandoned that over the course of the last few months because you don't have time for it all. So I've relearned what hard work is, and it's been good and refreshing and rewarding. But it's definitely been a challenge. So
what are you spending your time doing, Mikey?
It's a good question. I mean, a lot of everything, to be honest. So my role here, I would say, is kind of more like a regional type role, just because of how the team is composed. I do have help. So I've got a regional manager and a kind of a asset manager position that are up here helping as well. So my role is more geared towards almost, at this point, analytics and kind of analyzing, but also being there and being having an impact on the boots on the ground as well, impacting the individual managers at the properties, impacting relationships on a local level with contractors and vendors and referral partners, that kind of thing. So it's been good. I've really enjoyed it. But I'm ready to move on to the next phase. So once this portfolio gets stabilized, I look forward to kind of duplicating the model and, figuring out how to utilize our asset manager in a regional so I don't have to be here as much, but still keep my finger on the pulse of the business. So that'll be kind of the challenge moving forward, is how do I stay engaged through KPIs and reporting as opposed to actually being here and knowing what's going on. So that's kind of the next step.
Single family there, or is it just multifamily for now in Gainesville?
I mean, technically, you call it tweener, we call it boutique multifamily. So far, that's all we have is boutique and then traditional multifamily with on-site staff. So we would like to grow into the single family space. We just don't have anybody yet that is impacting that and going after those contracts. So we will eventually. I love the idea. I like that idea of the referral contracts. I think that's a cool idea. I wonder what it's like to be up against Vinny and be one of those 25%ers that only got 25% of the contracts. Like, as a competitive person, like, I would lose my shit. I would not be able to handle that. So
I'd be curious, what's the most stressful thing you've dealt with so far since opening Gainesville?
So low occupancy, high delinquency of an asset of a portfolio that you inherited, and not making excuses, but trying to figure out a solution literally every day. Like, how do we fix this problem? How do we fix this problem? Heading them off and trying to get ahead of it during a tough time in an economy that's largely driven by the University of Florida, where a third of their student population came back to school and the other 2/3 really didn't. So it's a battle.
How'd you keep your team engaged in that positive outlook?
The team, honestly, I would say the team's been energized. All the managers have stayed in place that were here beforehand. For the most part, they've been energized by our company's energy, by engagement. The old company who was managing the communities before, they couldn't get a hold of, they couldn't get answers, they couldn't get bills paid. And we're day one, boots on the ground here, full time, trying to help and trying to make a change. And they've been inspired by that. So, and a lot of it has to do with coming out, a little bit of coming out of the other side of COVID, where, they were, April, May, a lot of multifamily offices were completely closed. So how do you lease apartments? You know what I mean? And we came in and, it was, we came in at a time where, kind of coming out of that, where it's okay to open offices and social distance and that kind of thing. So it's been good. I've really enjoyed it. But I think we're all ready to kind of stabilize and move on. So, yeah.
One of the things that came out, and you mentioned this word a minute ago in our last pod when we did it in front of the Second Nature exchange, was hustle. And so I wanted to talk to you guys about hustle and what it means to you. And I really believe that growing a business, especially getting it up to a certain level, is all about hustle. And so I'd love to start with Duke and just kind of give your comments on the word hustle and, when you were first getting started, or even, and Tim, when he's starting this HOA business with you, what does it take to just grind it out and hustle, and how important is that?
Yeah, I'll preface this by saying Mikey kind of referenced this earlier. You go through periods, right? Like Mikey had a point where he was hustling nonstop, and then he took a year or two and slept a little bit. Now he's hustling nonstop and not sleeping. So I'm not sure like the periods of tremendous hustle that I've experienced and Mikey's experience you guys have is sustainable forever, but sometimes it's vital to get from point A to point B. I always think back to like the first 3 to 4 years of the business, and there's no way it would have gotten here there was a stretch where I got to the office. I mean, people don't believe this, and I don't really care if they believe it. I would get up at 4:30 and I'd be at the office about 5. And I did it every day, not every day, most days for several years. And I don't do that now. I don't get up at 4:30 now. I do actually sleep quite a bit now. But it for me, it was early on. It took those batches of like I'll call it extreme hustle, like almost like maniacal hustle, to get from the period. Maybe you have 3 employees, you need 5 or 6 employees, you can only afford 3, so you do the job of 2 or 3 people until you can grow a little bit and hire that person to backfill you. And I will say that we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for batches like that. And it wasn't just me, like it was people like Tim and people, some other early folks in the business that did a tremendous amount of work to get us off the ground, that kind of got us to the scale where we don't have to do that. It's nice if we do it, we don't have to do it. And I always have said that those times I was doing that, it didn't feel like work because I enjoyed it. Like if someone was making me do that, I would hate it. If you told me I had to be at a job tomorrow at 5 a.m., and that doesn't sound very exciting to me, but I wanted to do it. And it was, part of it was intoxicating, the grind. And part of me, every now and then I'll get back into brief sprints of tremendous grind. And I do enjoy it, but also try to balance it so I can enjoy family, kids, stuff outside of work too. I like to play golf, so I don't want to work 90 hours a week now.
He does like to play golf.
Oh yeah,
I see that on a daily basis that he's
Daily.
straining playing golf.
Not daily, but whatever, weekly, whatever.
Tim, you've probably grinded it out pretty recently, because in the last 18 months y'all started the HOA business. I'd be curious your thoughts on kind of these sprints of hustling.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't necessarily, I look at it a little bit differently than I think you guys do. And I never really put the hours around it, right? Like to me, I go back to basketball when I think of hustle. It may not surprise anybody. I wasn't that amazing at basketball when I played, but I was always willing to kind of do the dirty work. And I think it comes down to, are you willing, even in a leadership position, to do the shit people don't want to do, or do the shit that you have to do in order to make things work? It's not about, for Duke it was, and I'll attest, my BlackBerry used to blink starting at 4 o'clock in the morning and ding and vibrate. It was that for him. He had to put those hours in because he was getting the business off the ground. It was inspiring to me as well. But I think of the doing the dirty work, or the, I've got it actually right here. I'm taking my M100 in HOA management right now. I don't do association management on a daily basis, but I need to do that so that I can fully understand the business and not just put everything on somebody else. And so I kind of equate it to doing the dirty work more than, and not, I'd use dirty in quotes. I'm not scrubbing toilets and doing that sort of stuff at our associations, but I think putting in the effort, putting in the grind, no matter what the hours, and just making sure that you're setting yourself and your team up for success is kind of how I look at the hustle.
Yeah, there's times for leaders where you almost need to step up and force things to happen, right? You need to generate the momentum that kind of carries you through to the next plateau. Vinny, give us some thoughts on like seasons that you've hustled and the importance of the leaders getting the team, getting the company to the next plateau.
Yeah, so I'll touch on this. Then I got to jump because I'm actually hustling as we speak. So I have a really important meeting at 1:00. I've been on kind of a nonstop grind and hustle, and I feel like I'm still putting in my repetitions, and I enjoy it, and it's exciting. I think, having a good leader, I think Doug is an excellent leader. He's a sports guy, so he kind of grinds us like, he's a good coach, right? Like he's had great coaches in his life, and therefore I think he's a good coach. And one thing that always resonates with me that he conveys is like, ask for help and get coaches, right? So like I could hustle super hard, but I think what I'm trying to do is set myself up to have coaches in my life, whether that's personal coaches, you guys, like I look at you as kind of a 4-pack of coaches that I could lean on, so I think it's important to set yourself up to hustle at what you're really good at. And then if you identify spots that you're weak at, surround yourself with people who are experts in that arena. And it's enabled me to hustle harder at growth. Like that's where I bring the most value to mind is growth and culture. Like I'm kind of the heartbeat of I feel like our growth team, and I'm able to grind on those, and it doesn't necessarily feel like a grind because I love doing it. And then I could lean on others for areas that I'm not so strong at.
Okay. So Vince, serious question. Does Doug listen to the podcast?
I'm waiting to get us up to like 10 episodes, so then I could send it to him.
Then you can launch it.
Yeah.
Cool.
For it to be not
I got
shitty.
I got a question. I got 2 questions for you, Vinny, before you hop off, if you don't mind.
Okay.
What book are you reading?
All right.
Wait, did you hear that? Oh, you're getting it.
The Ride of a Lifetime. I think you guys recommended this one to me. I think you might have recommended this.
Favorite quote out of that book was, "Micromanagement is underrated."
Do you guys like this book?
Loved it.
Yeah, I enjoyed
awesome
it.
book.
Yeah.
Awesome
What's
book.
the second one? Second question.
Second question, where do you think the opportunity is going to be post-COVID or during the resulting recession?
And gosh, that's a like. I have like
Almost
15
the guy who wants
seconds.
to go. That's a nice.
This is something
In one word.
This is something
In one
I would-
word, Vince.
This is something I would ask you at dinner. This is supposed to be our roundtable conversation. Like what do you guys think? Where's the opportunity? And everybody's gonna get. I want
We
to hear.
need to
everybody's-
introduce wine to this, so towards the end, all the good nuggets come out.
Amen.
On
Yeah.
the second glass.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just speak specifically to property management and real estate because I think there's a lot of opportunities outside of that we should chat about offline. But the trend to SFR is hotter than ever. Mikey, you heard all of the talk about the build to rent, craze right now. Folks moving out of the urban areas into suburban, kind of having more space. I think there is going to be a craving for people to have an urban environment in a suburban neighborhood, right? Like there is something nice about having community and being close to each other. And you're seeing some of the build to rent developers create that urbanism in a suburban environment, which is, I think, a cool trend that may pick up some steam. And that looks like, a clubhouse that has shared office space and whatnot, and like a gym. So kind of, your apartment model, but in a scattered site form. So I think that could be an interesting opportunity.
All right.
All right, guys, have a good rest of the week, and sorry I have to jump.
Hey, Vinny.
All right, bye.
Mikey, talk to us about hustling.
Yeah.
Give us your,
So I
You don't know
mean,
anything about it.
listening to you guys, you answered it already. Duke mentioned when you're hustling and when you're working hard to build your business, it doesn't feel like work. And that's pretty much it. You know, I asked this.
it only
I was
feels
asked
like
this-
work if it's not working.
Yeah.
If hustling's
Then it's
working, then it
miserable.
doesn't feel like work. If it's not working, then it feels very much like work.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. You just refuse to lose, right? I mean, that's it. If it's not working, you change and you do something that is working. You try something new, and that's exciting too. So, I mean, for me, I got asked this question earlier about why we like the book, Delivering Happiness, the Zappos book. And he talks about like creating a culture where work is not work and blending like life and work together. So when I hear people talking about like work-life balance, I just don't, it like makes me cringe because there's no work-life balance. If you love what you're doing, if you're hustling and you're building something, it doesn't feel like work. And if you're not doing that, you're probably doing something wrong, you know? So for me, it's just, you know, it all kind of blends together. So I'm excited about what we're doing at Atrium, and a lot of the team is excited. The people who are bought in work 50, 60 hours a week and they don't care, you know, because they're working towards the mission, towards the goal. You know, with what Adam and I are doing with acquiring multifamily properties and building our own real estate portfolio, that's exciting. Like I could, you know, if I had more time, I would take it, you know what I mean? And spend it on that, you know? So to me, Duke hit the nail on the head. And then also Vinny, you know, with it's important to have coaches, both great points. And that's so true. Like you guys have made my hustle more fun. Also knowing that you guys are out there working your guts out makes me want to work harder. We've all seen it just on the Whoop straps that we wear, right? You want to push harder. Like if you go back and look at the first couple of months, like 14 strain was like, you were knocking it out of the park. Like I think 1 month Adam like took it home with like 13.5 on average. Right. And like, for those of you out there who don't understand it, like you get a daily score on how hard you worked. And when we first started, people were like crushing it. They were at 13.5. Now, like Duke is consistently like, I hit like a 19.7 the other day. And I was literally
cheating the system. Is that?
What's that?
Duke's consistently cheating the system. Is that what you're trying?
I think Duke attaches his to his dog.
Doesn't feel like
Dog's got a heart condition and he wears it around. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, so like Mike, I'm gonna piggyback on what you were saying about your folks are working hard and like they don't, you know, it's not that they don't have a life and other things to do, I'm sure, but like early on, I remember like getting a phone call and the tenant, it's a potential tenant, and it's a property I've been trying to rent for a couple of weeks. I want that owner to be happy, and so the call comes in and the person's like, "Yeah, can you show it to me Sunday at 11 a.m. at the only time I'm in town?" My brain went right to, "Yeah, happy to." You know, I work around that schedule because I want to lease that property. I want that owner to be happy. I want the tenant to be happy. And like that didn't seem like, I wasn't like, oh crap, I got to work Sunday. I was like, oh, this is an opportunity to go lease that house on Sunday. And like some of our people early on, like Tim bought into that, like Tim calls it doing the dirty work. Like basically just you find a way to get it done or you find an excuse, right? And early on, a lot of our people found a way to get it done, and call it hustle, call it hard work, call it sacrifice, whatever. It's the satisfaction of solving a problem, the satisfaction of building a business. And if you get addicted to that versus addicted to other stuff, you know, it can be pretty powerful early on even later on in your business.
Yeah, Gary Keller talks a lot about this in his book, The One Thing. He talks about seasons of hustle, you know, that you can't go through like seasons of hustle with your family. You need to stay pretty closely connected to your family. But in your work life for you, and I'm going back to moving from plateau to plateau, you really need to have seasons where you're just kind of balls to the wall, hustling, getting it done to get to the next plateau. But then he talks about having seasons of rest. So Mikey right now is in a season of hustle. I want to be in a season of hustle. I've been looking for an acquisition opportunity for the last 9 months and haven't found one, had some fall through. But as soon as that happens, I mean, I'm kind of going to get engaged and I'm going to be, you know, 60 to 80 hours a week hustling to make sure that goes off without a hitch.
Yeah. So Mikey, like you're going to Gainesville right now, you probably don't think, oh crap, I got to go to Gainesville again. You're probably excited about the problem you're going to solve or the client you're going to impact or whatever.
Yep. Whenever things are going good.
That has nothing to do with the little kids at home either, right? Like, I mean, the fact that you're, going to bed when you want to with no responsibility at night. Oh, we'll cut this out
No,
if your wife listens to it.
We probably
sure
not talking about
she
this.
does. No, I miss the kids. I mean, that's a real part of it. That's
Sure.
that's the hardest part of it for sure. I will say this, like I was thinking about it this morning. I wonder how different it is than when my dad was going away on business travel, because now like you're away, but I still FaceTime with them a couple of times a day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they still see me. It's not like I've just disappeared. You know what I mean? My face is still in their, in their minds and talking to them a couple of times a day. So I think that's really changed business travel, to be honest. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. My wife's dad was a salesperson, and he literally traveled Monday through Thursday every single week. So the fact that I travel, when I'm traveling a lot every other week for 2 or 3 nights is like nothing to her. And I have all this anxiety around it, and she's kind of like, what? I mean, it's no big deal. Go do it. All right, I'm going to switch to one more subject that I really wanted to talk about, and that is job titles. So the reason I thought about this was I just changed the title of my job to CEO, and I always wanted to like get to a certain point. At first, it was $1 million in revenue. I thought if you're not doing $1 million in revenue, you can't really call yourself CEO. And then I did $1 million in revenue, and I thought my business wasn't big enough yet to call myself a CEO. So then the number was 10 million in revenue. And I will tell you, we hadn't quite hit that. I mean, we're closing in on it, but I'd be interested to hear you guys' thoughts around, like, first of all, dude, what is your title and why are you called that?
Now it's CEO. It was president forever because I didn't know what else to call it. And then we hired a guy, Tim, it was Ross, who was the head of our commercial team. He wanted me to change it to CEO. And I was like, that sounds too pretentious. I'm not just the act of changing it, and people see you changed it on LinkedIn. Like it's just too pretentious. So I ignored him. And then the second person, I think Brian, our COO, suggested it because we hired the COO as a new position. And so the other guy had to be a CEO.
Right.
So I changed it, but it was around like
that's
100.
what caused me to change it too, right? We just hired a COO.
Yeah.
And a COO needs a CEO. So that's why I changed it too.
Yeah, we don't have a chairman and we don't have a president here. We have just the CEO here.
Do you have anybody that's all 3 positions though?
And that's
chairman, CEO, and
chairman, CEO, and president. I can't imagine someone being that important to need 3 titles. So,
No.
Mikey, what is your job title?
Great question. Thank you for it. My business card just says partner. So owner, which I'm sure you guys, aside from Tim, have all had on your business card at one time or another. We haven't delineated out CEO or COO. If you had to put a title on me, I'd be COO. In our current organization, and Adam would be CEO, which you guys know that COO definitely not my strong suit. So, we kind of have 2 CEOs.
We told you last time to fire Adam and become the CEO.
Yeah. Too many White Claws that day.
You make up for it with hustle.
Hustle. There you go. That's it, man. You got to work harder if you're not good. So, but I agree. All the titles are ridiculous, and I agree. Also, like CEO sounds kind of.
Well, when
tough.
is it appropriate? Like, when is it appropriate to be a CEO? I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Mike's, you're asking Mikey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
a lot more money than I'm currently doing. So like you think about it, like when we went out, I kind of put it into perspective when we went out to San Francisco and everybody's talking about the C-suite executives. And it's like, okay, these guys are all, making serious bank and, it just feels different. That book that Vinny's reading kind of put it into perspective too, how important those titles are and what they mean, CEO and COO. It's not that the work we're doing is any different or less important. And a lot of times, like as the president or the owner of a property management company, you're doing more work than like many CEOs out there. Like we work harder, we hustle harder, but there's a different level of sophistication and organization that goes into a lot of those companies that have those C-suite titles that I just don't think we have yet.
Are you
Yet.
telling me and Duke that we're over titling ourselves at this
You
point?
guys are a lot bigger than me, a lot bigger. And your organization, I mean, maybe it's the 100 employee threshold. I mean, Duke hit that a while ago, you know? So
I'm not there yet, so maybe I'm in trouble. I'm closing in fast, but
I think it's
you have a COO. To that point, you had to hire a COO. I'm sure you're paying a COO salary. So you're just an underpaid CEO today, man.
there you go.
I think it's whenever you feel important enough to write a book about yourself or have multiple podcasts. Then you can do it.
Yeah, 100 employees or 2 podcasts. That's
Or
what
2 podcasts.
Well, I think hiring a COO, to answer your question in an honest way, I think hiring a COO is when it makes sense.
Right.
If you want a real
What
answer.
about CFO? What if you hire a CFO first? That
Yeah,
makes sense.
Same.
True CFO, yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I get into, I mean, calling a CFO is also a big deal too, right? Because there's all these levels in that kind of accounting and finance world that people move through to become like a true CFO. And a lot of times what I think people do is over name people in this business. And one of the problems you can run into if you over name somebody is if they can't grow fast enough with the company, you're going to have to essentially demote them to a higher head of them. And so that feels a little weird too. And if you don't want to lose that person, you probably don't want to over name them, because it's going to feel really weird to go from on your LinkedIn profile from CFO to director of finance or director of accounting.
Controller, accounting manager. Yeah, like we hired a director of business development early on when we were like 5 people. We should have called him a lot of things other than director. I didn't even realize the importance of that title at the time. But that exact same happened. He was a sales manager. It was a sales.
It was one person. It wasn't even a manager. Yeah.
Right. So like that's just a rookie mistake early on that you don't really think about. But to your point, the demotion down the road, it's so much better for that person if they're called a salesperson, and then 5 years later you hire a director of business development over top of them, right? Or a sales manager over top of them.
Yeah.
I think themselves.
I think I realized the importance of this when we were hiring the person who now kind of runs our Richmond single family office, and she wanted the name director in there, and it didn't occur to me how important or all the different variances that meant. I think to employees it means whether it's director or CFO or COO or whatever it is. I never cared about it, but to other people it's okay. Well, that's my value monetarily, and my mom looks at my LinkedIn profile, right? And then if I don't have this job title now, what if I end up leaving Dodson? Obviously no one would ever leave Dodson Property Management, but then I'm not able to leverage that job title going somewhere else. And I didn't really I guess I was naive in that sense. I didn't fully understand the importance of it. Those middle level managers, right? We're talking about CEO, CFO, but I think that's just as important because those are kind of the lifeblood of your organization when you think about it.
Think about LinkedIn and like external recruiters. If the thing they see, they're recruiting towards that. And so that means they're going to throw money at that level of money at that person. So even happy employees start looking around when they get recruited. Someone's saying they're making 60 grand, someone else 90 grand. Who's not going to look? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, you could do yourself.
That's why it's important to list chairman, CEO, president, all of them on your LinkedIn profile.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you all a funny story. We hired a young lady to be our receptionist one time, and she was like, well, what do you want to call me? And so that was too low of a job title for her. So I said, well, just make up whatever you want to. So as Duke said, when LinkedIn updates your job profiles, I was looking through LinkedIn, and here comes Director of Communication at GK Houses across the as I'm scrolling, and I was like, wow. But once I gave her the opportunity to do that, I can't go back and say, you're not the Director of Communications.
Right.
And then she changed to Director of Sales, and it was it's hard to hire ahead of a Director of Sales if we reduce her to BDM in her mind.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, that's a tough one. That's very tough.
When do we get on each other's board of directors so that we can start being included in these C-level interview processes? I feel like we should have been included in Matthew's CFO or COO hire. Like, I don't even know this person.
You guys are my board. You guys are my board.
That's what I'm saying, man. We should have been in on this interview. You should do like a soft interview, like 15 minutes with the.
That's not a bad idea. I would love that. I would love to do that for you guys.
I know.
Hey, just on this topic, hey, I had to pull up my business card to find out my my title. Do you know what it is?
Right now?
Yeah.
Today?
He of single family unit HOA.
Yeah. Yeah, we gotta talk about that, man. my LinkedIn profile, man. I only got 84 views in the last like 60 days. I got to get that up, man.
I looked up the average comp for that, Tim, and we'll talk about it offline with what that person's average comp is. Make sure you're in line with it.
I'm certain I'm not.
He wants to be
certain I'm not.
Wait, I want to ask you guys the same thing. Where do you think the big opportunity is going to be post-COVID during the resulting recession? Or are we in a recession? I keep hearing we're in a recession. Are we in a recession? And where's the opportunity going to be? Like, big picture. Doesn't have to be single family.
I think you're silly if you don't think we're in a recession. I know the stock market's been rallying lately. Today, I think it's actually down a bunch, but I think it's silly to not think that we're in some sort of recession. I actually think we're all very poised to be in the right position, right? I think we couldn't have picked a better business to be in over the next 4 to 5 years, because people, even if we come up with some sort of virus vaccination tomorrow, number one, people aren't going to be all vaccinated in one day, and number two, the sting of this is not going to go away anytime. So people are going to be really, focused on where they want to live. I think us being in rental housing and renting units to people is vital. To everybody's got to have a place to live. So I can't tell you how excited I am. I was really hopeful that it would create a lot of M&A opportunities, and it just hasn't, because I feel like it's been easier lately than normal. Now, the summer generally is pretty tough on all of us because that's when people move. But I just really thought that it was going to cause a whole lot of M&A opportunities. And to me, at least for our purposes, that hasn't manifested. So I like where we are.
I think.
Go ahead, Tim.
Do you want to go?
No, go ahead.
I think, school just started in Richmond today. Today was the first, and I think across a lot of counties in Virginia, today was the first day. I think we're headed towards an even deeper recession. I think we're in it now, and I think that's going to cause some issues. And I'm a little bit nervous about that. But, where do I think the opportunity is? I mean, maybe just to sound smart, I'll say short-term rentals. I mean, I talk to a lot of young people that are saying, hey, I'm selling my house, and I'm going to live half the year in Colorado, half the year in Florida. And so maybe not vacation rentals necessarily, but 3 of my buddies are talking about doing that with their wives. Now, they don't have kids, so obviously that changes it. But, to Matthew's point, where people live is going to be more on top of their mind. And the fact that they don't have to necessarily live in Richmond year round, right? It gets pretty hot and muggy in Richmond in July and August. What if you could work from Denver, or you could work from Connecticut, or I don't know what other good states there are. I've only lived in Ohio and Virginia, Florida, but not in July or August, obviously. So short-term rentals is my answer, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with Mikey on the recession thing. I think we're in a worse recession than most people feel, because it hasn't trickled down to them yet, but it will. I think when it's just, waiters and waitresses and bartenders getting laid off, that doesn't affect, Main Street America. But, just right now, I have friends being laid off at Wells Fargo. You've got, we have an office tenant downstairs who's a nonprofit, because they probably got some kind of PPP-like money or whatever. They're paying rent, but they're moving out when their lease is up in a couple of months. They're not going to renew. There's all these like trickle down effects that are still happening. And so, if you don't feel it now, you probably will in some way over the next year, most likely. I think a vaccine will come, but it's not coming today or tomorrow. And there's a lot of, we got to get to the slog of the next year to 2 years. So opportunities, I don't really know. What I do know is that things like river, lake destinations, campground destinations within an hour and a half of major metros are booming and will probably continue to do so. To Tim's point, why can't you just live at the river and work from there as opposed to working from the city of Richmond or from DC? I'm a little concerned about the whole, office retail sectors and all kind of urban stuff, but my hopes are that new construction will slow, which is, there's a negative effect to that, but it will keep supply and demand in check. So like everyone's worried about office space, but because no one's going to build office space, because of that, supply and demand will hopefully stay in balance. I think a big thing coming down the pipeline is higher ed and how that's going to adjust to this, because higher ed was already under attack and now this. And so what does that mean? Are schools going to reshape how they do business? And how about student housing around those schools? Like in the city of Richmond, BCU has saved the city of Richmond because it's continued to grow and develop real estate. And then what if, 5 years from now, only half of those kids are going to classroom, the other half are virtual? What does that do for student housing and just urban, any kind of development around the schools? So that scares the heck out of me because that affects our livelihood here in Richmond. But yeah, did I answer your question, Mikey?
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Mikey, what's your?
So somebody you guys all respect, and especially you, Matthew, talk about him all the time. Ray Dalio said this is going to be our Great Recession, our Great Depression, basically. Said it's going to be worse potentially than the Great Depression was for America. So he's a lot smarter than I am. So it makes me think that something crazy is going to happen, within the next 10, 12, 18 months in terms of the dramatic effect it's going to have on our economy. If you look at the default rates on office and retail specifically, it's historic. It is insanely high. So compared to the default rates on houses, now granted a lot more people have houses than commercial and office space, but the max default rate was like 11% in 2008 when we went into the Great Recession, and the default rates now on office and retail are in the 30-40% range in some sectors. So crazy high. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity. I don't know how to capitalize on that, but I think it's something we should really be looking at because, if you go back to 2008, 9, 10, 11, you would buy every single family house you could possibly get under contract because all of them have gone up by 40, 50% since then. So there's going to be opportunity either to reposition retail that's never going to come back or, to reposition it as multifamily or some other type of housing. Or maybe it's, a partnership with anyway, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity that comes in those spaces specifically. It's important to figure it out so we don't miss that wave. I think all of us in this group here are in a completely different place than we were in 2006, 7, and 8. And if we could go back, we'd all do it differently. So we need to pay attention today on what we're missing, get involved early as opposed to catching the tail end of it in 2011, 8, 2012, 13, when we really started to capitalize on it, at least myself specifically. So, yeah, I think we're in a recession. I don't think we really understand it or it's really hit us. Duke said it well. It's only affected, a certain percentage of the population so far because I think a lot of that has to do with the stimulus money that's been pumped into our economy. But that hurts the economy overall as it's going to devalue the dollar and create inflation. So I think overall, we haven't seen the tip of the iceberg. So we just need to be poised and not overextended and be ready for opportunity and see it and react. So that's my thoughts.
All right, quick round. Last question is, what are we reading? Tim, I'm going to start with you since that'll maybe be pretty quick. The HOA book?
Since you guys don't understand what a shtick is and keep giving me crap about, Tim doesn't read and all this shit. Yeah, I'm doing the M100 online and I'm reading Pivot Point by Sherry Jacobs. So now you guys have ruined a 2-month-long running joke because you guys are dumb dicks.
Dude.
Starting a book. It's called The $100 Million Exit by a local author. There's a local M&A guy. So I told him, I promised him I would read it. Doesn't mean I'm selling anything anytime soon. And I'm definitely not selling it for $100 million. But maybe one day.
But if they said 100 million, you definitely would sell it right now.
Yeah, if Vince is on the call, yeah, I would give him a real number. But no, yeah, I'm just starting it. I'll let you know how it goes.
Mike?
I am finally reading Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss.
Awesome.
It's a good one. It's been on the book list for a while. I just finished Effective Executive, which a bunch of you guys have recommended. I really enjoyed Effective Executive too.
Whoa, watch it. I'm reading Small Giants. I've read this before. Jordan Muela sent it to me as a gift. He was like, if you've already read this, read it again. So I'm reading it again. I'm about 3/4 of the way through it. I was in Little Rock last week, flew there and read most of it. But the whole idea of the book is you don't have to be big to be great, and just makes you rethink kind of our business strategy. So,
Is that what they based the movie Little Giants on?
no, it's not. Good question, though. Good
Different.
question. All right. If you haven't already subscribed to our podcast, please do that, and we'll see y'all next time.
Wolfpack for life. Go get them.